Hi, welcome to Actual Spinster. Today I'm going to do like an extremely belated wrap up for last year's summer reading project that I tried to run, and it was about reading Sylvia Townsend Warner books. And yeah, I was going to read one per month of June, July and August, so the months of the summer. My original plan was to read Mr. Fortune's Maggot, I mean, The True Heart, and then Summer Will Show, and that's sort of where the title came from. And Sylvia Townsend Warner was like a mid-century lesbian writer. She started publishing from 1926 and then all the way up into like the 70s and stuff. She wrote lots of short stories, but none of the things I was reading were short stories, but you could have read any short stories if you wanted. But yeah, and then I kind of like partially did my project, got to August, my friend died, and then I never finished Summer Will Show, and it was just a bit too painful. So yeah, I just didn't say anything about it and tried to finish Summer Will Show, and I still haven't, and that's fine. I talked a bit about this in my 1930s reading vlog at the end, just because I think putting more pressure and more kind of like judgment, or like just like reading Summer Will Show really publicly in the way that I was trying to do it was just, it's just too painful, and like I just couldn't do it. Then it made me feel bad, and then it made me not want to read it even more than like the sort of grief feelings I have around it, and like how, yeah, I just wish that my friend had got to read the book. And also a sad day today. Yeah, it just makes me sad to think about, because I think that my friend would probably have liked the book too. We could have had great conversations about it. Anyway, that's not the point of this video. The 3 books that I did end up reading, and I did end up reading 3, but I just didn't end up reading, like I read 2 in 1 month rather than 1 per month. And yeah, so I just thought I would like talk about the 3 that I did end up reading, and also probably like the next books that I want to read from Sylvia Townsend Warner. So these 3 are the 3 I read, and they are all from the 1920s, starting with Lolly Willows, which is from 1926. I did actually have a different copy, but then I lent it to somebody. And then this one is from 1927, and that's Mr. Fortune's Maggot, and then this one is from 1929, and it's The True Heart, which is very satisfying actually. So I think I'm just going to talk them through the order that they were published, which is also I think the order that I read them, or I might have read Mr. Fortune's Maggot and then Lolly Willows again and then The True Heart, but I don't think I did that. But anyway, not the point. So Lolly Willows is a book that I've talked about many times on this channel. It just tells the story of Laura Willows, who is a spinster. She's a spinstery woman, and it's kind of about her figuring out what to do with her life after being kind of an object in a family, like just like sort of like a tool, a resource. And there's obviously like bonus Satanism, and it's very embedded in the like natural world, which I would say Sylvia Townsend Warner's work is often quite like pastoral, and that makes sense from the like life she was leading in this like lovely cottage with her partner Valentine Ackland and blah blah blah. So yeah, there's that one. The next one I read was Mr. Fortune's Maggot, and I hated this one. It's one of those books that's talked about as being somewhat post-colonial, but is actually not, or at least not to the actual degree, if that makes sense. Like, whilst it isn't, because it's a satire. Okay, so basically the story tells this Reverend Timothy Fortune going to a remote tropical island called Fanua to convert people to Christianity, and it's about his experiences and his like foolishness. And whilst it is obviously a satire of this kind of proselytizing Christian ideology, this like deep colonial religiosity, and like the sort of hypocrisy and meaninglessness and just, yeah, like foolishness of the church and people who do this kind of work, missionary work, that's the word for it. It's also like that, it's sort of the main relationship that Mr. Fortune forms in the book is with a boy called, I want to say Llewellyn, Llewellyn, I believe. And sort of through that relationship he kind of realizes that A, there's no point in trying to convert people, and B, he's wrong, like the church is wrong, the dogma that he's been taught is just like not relevant, it doesn't work, it's not true. But the thing is, I think that the inhabitants of Fanua are too often also the brunt of the joke. Like, it kind of acts like these 2 groups of people, like missionary Christians and residents of remote tropical islands that are at danger of being, you know, colonized, that they're on the same level, as in sort of in terms of oppression, in terms of like position. And whilst obviously like Timothy kind of is in like a sort of powerlessness position in terms of like world politics and in terms of like the audience that Sylvia Townsend Warner, I almost called her like Laura Willows there, that's not yeah, like they're not, right? Like, I mean, it's trying to do something. My battery died, but we're gonna pretend it didn't. Wow, I feel like I look more like Hugh Grant than normal. Basically, what I was saying was that this is doing something, but it's not doing enough. and I think it gets too much credit for being like post-colonial when it's just slightly not pro-colonialism. But that doesn't mean it's like anti-racist, and that doesn't mean it has like a proper grasp of what being like anti-colonial or post-colonial might even mean. It doesn't actually fulfill that promise of post-coloniality, and again I don't think that during the times these books have been are being written that's like enough. That's not adequate. So yeah, it's not very good. The title is fun, especially when you are dyslexic, so I hope everybody enjoys that. Then the last one I have to talk about is The True Heart, which was published in 1929, and is actually it's the longest of the three that I finished, and I can't get over how like gorgeous I think this cover is. I just love it. Like, this is like a love story basically between Suki Bond, who's a 16-year-old orphan, and Eric, who's the son of a rector's wife, at a place where Suki is sent off to be a like farm worker or a servant on a farm. Yeah, it's a retelling of a Greek myth, and I can't really remember if I think that like telling you what myth that is will give it away. I don't think so. But so it's like a Psyche and Cupid and Psyche myth retelling. And in fact I think maybe more people would read it or be interested if they heard that, because it's always interesting to see like how myths are kind of retold or like explored and, you know, supplemented in different like eras. And I don't think this is like an incredible book, but I think that it was enjoyable. I think at parts it definitely gets into like a quite like fun rompy time. Also it's historical fiction, or I guess maybe it isn't in terms of like the 50-year mark or whatever, but it's set in the Victorian era and it was published, you know, 20 years after it finished, over almost 30 years. I think it's set in the 1870s or 1880s, I want to say, and that part's fun. And it's just kind of like we follow Suki as she kind of travels around. She goes to this farm near the Essex marshes and meets Eric, and then is kind of led on this quest almost, and we just follow along. And I definitely think there's something quite like clumsy but like also quite like dykey about the love story, even though it is a heterosexual one. And I think, you know, there's obviously this very kind of strong tradition of like queer authors writing straight love stories and kind of exploring gender non-conformity almost like through that, or like sort of projecting desire through that, supplanting or like transposing it, I guess. And so that's also kind of fun to think about with this. Yeah, I mean, it's been a while since I've read it, and I don't feel like I've really thought very intensely about it, but I would recommend it, especially if you're interested in myth retellings. And also, this edition has a preface written by Sylvia Townsend Warner in the 70s, and she like tracks exactly kind of what people and places and things are in the book onto the myth. And so like, in order to enjoy the story as much as possible, I think you should not read that first and read the book and then go back and read that, and then it will be fun, because then maybe you'll figure it all out, or maybe you'll have missed parts. So yeah, those are the three that I read. I think I spoke about this when I made my ill-fated announcements video, but I guess I should stop being that negative about it, because I did manage to read 3 books. It didn't happen like I wanted it to, but that's fine. But I did talk about maybe reading this Valentine Ackland, A Transgressive Life by Frances Bigham, which I feel like I talked about a lot on this channel, so I won't talk much. But like, now that I have read this quite a few months after reading these, it is nice because it's given me some more context on Sylvia Townsend Warner and Valentine Ackland. And especially there's this one section where Sylvia Townsend Warner talks about how Valentine Ackland, like when reading her work, would underline the things that Sylvia thought that nobody else would like notice, and I just thought that was like really special and nice. I think it's actually about the True Heart maybe that she was talking. I might be wrong, but that's sort of what I remember. I think that's just really lovely, very romantic. So yeah, I think it's pretty obvious like my favourites and my least favourites from this, because, you know, obviously Lolly would be first, and then The True Heart, and then Mr. Fortune's Maggot. In terms of what I'd like to read next from her, I think I am going to kind of keep trying to read in chronological order, but moving through Summer Will Show and like acting like I've read it, which this one's from 1936 I think. And then I have After the Death of Don Juan, first published in 1938, so that's the next one that I'm going to read, and is I think like inspired by Spanish Civil War. So I'm really interested in this, and hopefully I don't want to like curse myself by trying to do like another summer reading project for Sylvia Townsend Warner, and I wouldn't do the same thing as last year, but I do kind of feel like I'd like to read these over the summer, maybe that would be a nice project. They are all much bigger, like the ones that I have left are much longer novels, which is interesting. Although actually I think The Flint Anchor, which I think was her last novel, I don't have a copy of, so I don't know how long that is actually, but yeah. And then I also have this one, which is very like iconic, and that's The Corner That Held Them, and this was published in 48, I want to say. Yes. So yeah, these two are the like next two ones I'm gonna pick up. So yeah, thank you for listening, and if you did participate by reading a Sylvia Townsend Warner book last summer, thank you, and I'm sorry that there was like no real content after August about it. If you've read any of the books I mentioned or want to, definitely let me know, I'd love to hear. And yeah, I hope that you're having a nice day when you watch this. Bye!